Hello there, my name's Brandon and I make pictures out of tiny squares. And today I'm going to be making a new Darth Vader sprite, the first one in a while. And before that, I wanted to go on a quick journey looking back on what I've done previously to inform what I might do today. I started making pixel art in 2015, but I didn't tackle Darth Vader until the following year, where at that time I was really into making sprites that followed the NES Mega Man style. With most of these being somewhere around 24 pixels tall, it was a simple construction to grasp onto, and really helped me learn how to work at limited sprite sizes by requiring the translation of finer details of all types of character designs into this small space. Eventually I started to feel a bit held back at that sprite size. Like, I felt like I could do more if only someone would give me a larger canvas. So I started to push it into larger styles, anywhere from 30 to 50 pixels in height. And I found that all the stuff that I practiced with the smaller Mega Man sprites actually came in handy and really let me appreciate and utilize this new and larger real estate. Around this time I created these two Darth Vader sprites here, which I kind of refer to in my own headcanon as being Super Nintendo inspired, with my intent being like something you might see in a colorful 16-bit platformer game. From there, I started to take more risks as an artist. Or not even risks really, but I suppose just gaining confidence and comfort with my own style and perspective, having been 3 to 4 years into the craft at this point. And those years would see the creation of Saturday Morning Cartoon Darth and a full reinterpretation of Darth Vader as a Mega Man boss. But then after that, the trail goes dark. See, 2019 was the year that I started this YouTube channel. And in fact, the Mega Man boss Vader was one of the earliest videos here. And then I kind of haven't revisited the concept of a full Vader sprite since. Although regular viewers will also recognize the connection that I do keep up a yearly tradition of creating a new Jedi Luke Skywalker every year, with 7 years on record so far. But that's a good story for another day. And so today, somehow, Vader returned, because I'm going to make a new entry into the line since it's been a good while. I've measured out a generous sprite size of 70 pixels, and I'm laying in a rough blobby character silhouette to get started. I'm eventually going to erase from this to create the line work and detail of the costuming, so I've tried to leave the silhouette with a bit more bulk than I think I need, because erasing from within that to leave a 1 pixel outline tends to thin out the proportions a little anyway. I'd been thinking about what direction to take this new Vader sprite, and one of the things that I played on with a lot of the previous designs was sort of skewing his design into these other stylized variants that I would come up with. I always kind of enjoyed how robust the design is, that it's still quite recognizable as the character, even when you put this other kind of spin on it. So as you might be able to already tell, my inspiration for this work today was actually throwing it all the way back to one of the Ralph McQuarrie concept designs for Darth Vader. In this earlier design, we can see that his chest unit is mounted on this kind of harness. He's got a pointy or tattered edge to the cape, and he's holding a bluish-white lightsaber. It's pretty cool to see how close this design was to what ended up on screen, and those slight variants made it quite intriguing for me to explore how a pixel art sprite might turn out. So here's a look at the line work so far. I'm going to do the cape later since that can just be painted behind everything, and for now just wanted to make sure that the body was solid. I've also settled on a lightsaber angle set using these repeating 2 pixel wide units. Now, this seemed to look the most natural for this posture, and it's usually quite beneficial to select some regular angle for an item or accessory like this. The one that tends to be the easiest and most versatile is actually the perfect 45-degree angle, like with the 2 more recent entries here. If you want clean layering to the colors and the addition of cool effects or anything, there's just quite a favorable symmetry to using that angle. But I mean, you can't always expect the character to hold their weapon like that, so we'll carry on here and just see what we can do with the 2 pixel angle. To color the sprite, I'm laying in a base foundation of a grayish blue. I made a point to select a color that was a fairly low to moderate saturation. A lot of my previous work with the Vader series used incredibly strong colors, and often pushed the blacks and grays really hard into these purple tones. Which is just sort of this hyper-vibrant styling that I do still really enjoy. But for this one in particular, with the inspiration coming from McQuarrie's paintings, it was fitting to tone it back towards something that's more grounded. Now at this point you can see I'm adding some actual rendering here, which includes a few highlights along the edges that'll be facing the lightsaber, to actually have it look like it's casting light onto the character. Along with the shading, I find it can be tempting to get a bit carried away with this kind of detailing. So to keep it measured for now, I'm starting with a single shade tone and then 2 steps of those highlight tones. And that's on top of the base color and the black line work, of course. For the lightsaber, I've added in another blue tone, something even lighter, to be a brighter core for the steps of color creating that blade. And this is where the fun begins, because the last thing here that really brings the design together is adding in the cape. I built this up in steps by starting with the lower skirt piece here, bringing in that pointy look from the concept art by using the black to draw that shape, and then connecting the sides with the main costume color. I handled the cape by laying in the foundation with a large pencil size, and on top of that I added a couple highlights for a rippled effect. The whole thing started with this clean edge, and I erased some points out of it to get a kind of tattered look. And from here I got the idea to go a step further and actually try animating some motion into the cape. So what I'm doing here is that I'm trying to introduce a sort of curve or wave into the highlight edge of the fabric. And then with each successive frame, this wave is going to move along toward the bottom point of the cape. This is paired by having the terminating edge respond with sort of a flapping motion. But the entire silhouette is also going to have a slight bit of motion for each frame as well. Otherwise it might just look like it's pinned down if the pixels were always just staying in place there. So here's the test shot of that motion, and you can kind of trace the peak of that wave making its way through these frames. Eventually I expanded this entire movement set into 6 frames, and animated the other pieces as well. Because these highlights were animated independently from one another, it has a bit of an effect of almost looking like there's these different layers of cape, but I kind of like the idea of a messy, tattered cape like that, so I just kind of decided to roll with what I was already doing. Another polishing bit of animation was the lightsaber effect, and there's kind of 2 mechanisms at play here. The first is that the core of the blade alternates between white and light blue every frame for this sort of strobing effect. And the other thing is that there's this 3-frame lightning effect that's providing this corkscrew motion around the blade. And the application of it was laid out to provide an overall taper to the visuals of the blade. So with that, let's go ahead and take a look at the new Vader sprite. Here we go. Alright, so one of the final animations was incorporating this up-down sort of breathing cycle. Since the cape and the lightsaber both had animations, it looked like it was wrong to have Vader totally frozen solid between those. My secret weapon to make the motion smoother for this action though was to introduce a bit of blending into the sprite work. There's this in-between tone that's providing some glue between the original tones, and so I'd use that to kind of smooth the transition into shadow or line work as the body moves up and down. So if you're wondering what the sprite might look like as the more typical Darth Vader costume, as was I've gone ahead and done a quick edit to get it close to that, albeit, with the chest harness and everything still. But it's got the little lights and the red saber, so it kind of works. And this way they almost just look like alternate costume palettes from a game or something. And finally, let's go back to the Vader lineup from earlier and add him in with the rest. I think what stands out to me the most is just the natural progression in getting more comfortable with larger sprite sizes, and also the way that color and contrast is used. Particularly in these early ones, there's sort of this washed out look from those really saturated tones. The one that holds up surprisingly well for me though is the Saturday morning cartoon variants, which I think just happened to be a good pairing between stylization and skill level at that time. But in the end, I'm proud of all my Darth babies because they were all necessary to get to the new one. And now he's also got the honor to be the first animated one in the roster. And we'll cap this off now with some CRT time. So thank you for watching, and take care and keep it square.